And you write about shortly after the lawsuit. So maybe you can tell us about the lawsuit that gets filed against Tyson, and we'll talk about sort of the outcome of the lawsuit next.
Yeah, so the lawsuit, and when I was following, as after workers died and some families received, $650,000 in medical bills because this was not, it wasn't a slow death. Many of these deaths meant spending months in the hospital on a ventilator, and all of these kinds of things. And so workers started to organize. They wanted justice for these deaths, specifically because the company, workers who died and their families said that Tyson asked workers to continue working while having testing positive for COVID. So these outbreaks, because meatpacking companies were the largest site of COVID outbreak aside from prisons, these outbreaks were preventable. But it was, it's hard to prove that because Arkansas, like many states, passed, it's called limited liability legislation, which meant that no company was responsible for anything related to COVID. And so workers could not sue for wrongful death. They had to come up with another lawsuit, and they sued for affliction of emotional damage and distress, which, at the time it was interesting to me. I was looking into other cases like that, and talking to lawyers. I had a lot of lawyers in my life. And so eventually over several years, they finally filed the lawsuit, which they then lost.
So what was the reaction when they lost the suit? I mean, they are learning organizing principles, they're filing lawsuits within the constraints of the state that they're operating in, and then they lose. Did they feel like they still had fight in them? Was there a sense of, dejected and we give up? Sort of where are the organizing efforts now?
Well, it was really hard because what workers said that the lawyer in charge of the case had told them that they would definitely win, which is, probably something you shouldn't be saying as a lawyer. So they were quite upset about it because they felt that they had been told that they would win this case. And they won, and some of them wondered if Tyson had somehow influenced that. But that's something that they wonder with a lot of things. So they were, a lot of workers were quite upset about it, and I think some took some time maybe away from organizing. But Vince Ramos has continued doing really, really incredible work around child labor, which is the current pressing issue, not only in Arkansas, but in the US, just because it's also a central part of Project 2025 and the incoming Trump administration, and legislation that is, that has been passed in Arkansas that is being used as a blueprint for other states to really promote child labor.
No, it is hard to fully comprehend. I am curious because I want to leave time, of course, for questions from folks here. One last question that I had, though, since the book has come out, have you heard from Tyson? And what have you heard from the workers as well in presenting their stories back to them?
Well, I have heard from Tyson only in the sense that, for example, the New Yorker published a short review of the book, and their fact checkers asked Tyson for a response, and it says something, Tyson says most of this book is not true, or it's something like that. So that's the response I've gotten from them. And in terms of workers, the first thing workers ask me is, why isn't this in Spanish? Because, at this point they can't read it, in English. And so I published one chapter in Spanish, and I sent that to workers, and they've been really, really supportive and continued to work with me. I'm working on a podcast in Spanish related to the book. And so I'm just thankful that they have been able to do that because I know that it's extremely emotional and difficult for them to continue talking about some of these issues.
And I mean, one of the things, Alice, you do so well, and I can say that sort of looking at the arc of our time working together, is giving voice to the voiceless, which this book is really just the epitome of. So definitely encourage folks to read it. But